So welcome, everyone. This is one in our series of inspiring experiences webinars that we run for the DigComp community of practice. And it's also open to any interested person. And today, I'm really, I must say, very happy and excited about this webinar because you will hear about how the DigComp framework has been adopted and adapted in the Latin America and Caribbean region. And this is a very, we have members in the COP from this region, but now they will have the opportunity, to also use a customized framework for the region. And this development is very interesting. Also, also in Europe, we have had adaptations of the framework. So it's always very interesting to see how in different contexts they are being, they're using and adapting the framework. I pass the floor to Riina Vuorikari, who will be moderating the meeting. As usual, we have presentations and in the last part, some time for questions and answers. In principle, we should end at 3, but we are flexible. If we need a little bit more time, there is no problem. Thank you very much and welcome to our guests, speakers. And Riina, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefano, for the warm words of welcome. And also from my part, welcome everybody and all the AI bots too. Welcome to this webinar that is very interesting and very on the spot. It seems to me that this global sort of globalization, let's say, of digital competence needs has been evolving very fast in the last, let's say, 5 years, of course, after COVID. And of course, with this global gateway initiative also from the EU, there's more possibilities to work with other parts of the world on this topic. This is a great example, DigCompLAC, of this kind of work. And personally, for me, it's been a pleasure this year to see a lot of initiatives coming out in the Latin America and Caribbean region. This summer, I was in Brazil. One of the also parts of this working group is CETIC. It's a regional center for studies on the development of the information society and running their participating in 3-day workshop and being part of running one of the workshops myself on actually ICT indicators, where we talk about DigComp, how the indicators are related to DigComp areas and so on. I also had a chance to be in Mexico City talking with the universities about the use of these EU frameworks for helping them to be part of digital transformation of their educational offers. So this DigCompLAC is very timely. It seems that there's a lot of demand on the ground. So without spending more time on it, I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is from the part of the, let's say, organizing body or governing body for this work, Franziska Seiffarth from the German, let me see if I can get this, GIZ. It's a hard one to say, but please tell us a little bit more about your organization and your own role. You have worked as an advisor for different initiatives worldwide and in the Latin American and Caribbean region, and always looking at the policy and policy aspect and with this digitalization. So please introduce to us this topic, and then we get to meaty details later with the second speaker, who will actually talk us through of the whole, let's say, process of localizing work. And then we'll have at the end, final speaker giving us a little wrap up and the next steps. So go ahead, Franziska, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Riina, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today and for the interest in the initiative. And yeah, again, of course, special thanks to both Stefano and Riina for accompanying us and also for organizing the space. So thanks so much, Stefano, also for this. So for us, yeah, a great pleasure to be here with the DigComp COP that actually I'm also a member of for quite some time. So it's great to be able to actively contribute and also leverage this great space. So we are very happy to connect on this initiative, let's say, that has been moving ahead quite dynamically over the past months, which is the development of a regional digital skills and competences framework for Latin America and the Caribbean, which we for now labeled DigCompLAC or DigCompLAC in the Spanish version. So just to give you a sense of where we are going, I'd like to quickly walk you through the background of the initiative, so a bit the more boring part, let's say, on the approach we are taking, actors involved, and a bit what comes next. And of course, then Florencia Ripani, our consultant, would also take us deeper into the adaptation process, and later also we'll hear from Fernando from eCLAC a bit on the broader outlook. So I think we can go to the next one, a bit on the context. So as maybe some of you know, and we can, I think, jump also to the next one already. Perfect, thanks. Our work sits with the EU-LAC Digital Alliance, which is a bi-regional flagship initiative, also financed by the European Commission, which was launched in early 2023 under the Global Gateway Investment Agenda, the GGIA. And basically this alliance is really about promoting human-centered digital transformation in both regions. So within this alliance, you can see there in the first pillar, we have the high-level policy dialogues where the German Development Corporation, GIZ, which I'm representing here, but I'm representing the EU-LAC Digital Alliance in this as well. We are working together both with the UN Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, eCLAC, the colleagues from France, from Expertise France, from FIAP, the Estonian e-Governance Academy, and the Slovenian Artificial Intelligence Center, ERCAI. So you see, this is really a Team Europe endeavor. And yeah, so this pillar basically acts as a political, but also a bit of a technical bridge between the two regions, a space that allows us to work on digital policy issues together. And yeah, so one of the shared priorities that keeps coming up, not surprisingly, is hence the topic of digital skills and competences, which would fall under the meaningful connectivity pillar, and hence gives us the possibility to look a bit more, let's say, at digital inclusion with the skills perspective. So what you could see in the previous slide, but I think we can leave it at that, that the initiative that we are presenting today is really part of a broader, let's say, regional framework, of a larger, let's say, long-term and bi-regional effort, and it's not a standalone initiative or a document of framework in that sense. We can go to the next slide. So there you see the meaningful connectivity component, and of course it's a bit of an artificial division here on the work streams. We have divided secure and resilient connectivity, and then a bit like more this accessibility and inclusive connectivity. I mean, in general, beyond these, let's say, artificial subdivisions, of course, the logic is quite straightforward. Having connectivity is one thing, but then being able to use it productively, safely, and creativity is what makes it actually meaningful. And I think it's important because what we see in the region is that specifically the term meaningful connectivity is what guides our work, and to make this emphasis, right, that we have, of course, the supply side, but that we are more and more focusing also on the demand side of connectivity. And then maybe just very briefly, what we try to do, or a bit of the essence, let's say, of the DigCompLAC as we envision it, and we can go to the next slide, is that it's a regionally led process. So the initiative is co-developed and steered both by the German Development Corporation, by ECLAC and CETIC, and of course with contributions from governments, experts, institutions across the region. So the idea, of course, is to build something that really reinforces ownership, reflects the realities on the ground. I mean, it's a very diverse, very heterogeneous region, of course, if we talk about Latin America and the Caribbean, tailored to the regional context. And I think maybe some of you attending today, you have gone through a similar approach here at national level or sub-regional level as well. So we are doing, of course, mappings, consultations, etc., to be able to tailor actually and to do this adaptations to the LAC context. And the outcome, of course, as we see here, a practical framework. That is, of course, used in the vision, but really with the vision to have a common language, that is flexible enough then also for diverse local or sub-regional context. And I mentioned briefly on the, let's say, composition of the actors involved. So we have the pleasure to work, we can go to the next slide, with ECLAC on this, who of course at regional level are leading the meaningful connectivity agenda. So with ECLAC, they provide, let's say, the regional leadership, and also we ensure that we are able to anchor it in the only in the only regional digital agenda that we have in the region, which is the eLAC agenda, and now for until 2026. Then you see German Development Corporation GIZ, which we coordinate the meaningful connectivity component under the Digital Alliance that I earlier presented. And then we have CETIC also, that really brings a very strong methodological expertise, Brazilian institution focused especially around or on digital inclusion and competences, assessment, mediation, measurement, etc. So I think we can go to the next one. What we basically want to emphasize in this translation process, or translating it into practice, of course, we want to make sure that it will be implemented in a meaningful way. So of course we are also working on an implementation guide. We are seeing whether we manage to build a network of experts. We won't be that ambitious to try to duplicate the great work that you have been doing here with the DigComP, but ensure that we can continue a continuous dialogue, of course, in the region, but then also with spaces like these, which of course are so fruitful and so valuable for us also in the development. And we just discussed it earlier, also with now the published DigComp 3.0, of course, to ensure continuous consistency. Now what you see there, and I think also Fernando will comment on more, then of course our main, let's say, instrument also that we work through with technical assistant to provide support to selected countries in testing, applying the framework like early on. And yeah, I think I can stop here. Leave the, let's say, boring, more high-level part. So I'm very happy to be able to hand over to Florencia, who will walk you through a bit more the adaptation process. And here again, my mail, you can reach out at any time, of course. And then we hear a bit more from Florencia, but of course, first back to Riina, our moderator, and thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, Franziska. Really interesting to hear all that background and actually how many actors are behind and how these things flow and work. Thank you for that. So Florencia, you are the main sort of consultant in this project who has been working hands-on with probably a lot of people. You will be telling us about the process, how this adaptation process happened from DigComp 2.2 to DigCompLAC version that you have now in your hands. I've had the pleasure to take a look at it, and I was very excited, and I'm very excited to share this webinar with everybody. So you're really international expert and research in digital innovation, and you worked with a lot of different actors, both in Europe, but Latin American countries, also that region on research, policy development, and please go ahead. Floor is yours. You probably have some slides to share with us. So go ahead, and you have some 20 minutes, 25 minutes for this part. So we'll be all ear. So thank you. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Riina. It's a pleasure to share this space, this event with the community of practice of DigCom. And I'm very grateful that we can discuss and exchange ideas with colleagues from different regions. I know there are many people from Latin America also in this event. So also many others from Europe. And it's always great to have the opportunity to exchange, particularly when we are talking about an adaptation of work in which you have been obviously greatly involved with Stefano. So it's a pleasure that you are part of this session. So I will share with you the adaptation approach and key novelties on the production of DigCompLAC. This is the framework for digital competence for Latin America and the Caribbean. First of all, I would like to share the guiding principles for the development of this framework. And we need to consider the context of Latin America and the Caribbean, which has a particularity, which is the inequalities. So the region is the most unequal region in the world. And that is also evident in the digital divide. Just to mention a piece of information, more than 70% of the population in the region lacks basic digital skills. So the aim, as Franziska shared with you, of this project is to promote digital transformation and meaningful connectivity, for which the development of digital competencies is a clear need. So in the process of adapting DigComp to the region, the guiding principles were, first of all, and mainly the regional relevance. And this has to do with taking into consideration the social digital realities, the gaps, which unfortunately are structural gaps, and the diversity of contexts in Latin America. This ranges from minority groups and multicultural, cultural and diversity cultural minorities that live in different regions of Latin America and the Caribbean, connectivity constraints and infrastructure constraints, and the differences between the urban and the rural environment in terms of access to technology and literacy in general. Another guiding principle is inclusiveness and equality. And in this respect, the aim is to ensure that the framework responds to the needs of the populations with varying levels of digital access and literacy. Literacy is also important because the gap and the divides that we have in the region also relates to the capacity to read and to express ideas orally and in a written medium, and that affects obviously and is interconnected with some digital competencies. We have different scenarios that possibly are not so common in Europe, which, for example, is low connectivity scenarios, and that needs adjustments, for example, in examples of use, which needs to be considered in order to include all the different contexts that we have in the region in the framework. Another guiding principle is updating, and this is because, as you know, The version 2.2 of DigComp has been published a few years ago, and there has been some emerging technologies reconfiguring the way in which we as humans interact with technology, with more sophisticated competencies needed. And this has to do, for example, with generative AI. So there are some elements in the adaptation that are related to these novelties in the field of emerging technologies. Another guiding principle is related to clarity, taking into consideration that the level of knowledge about digital technologies in the region, in Latin America and the Caribbean, is possibly lower than in Europe. It was important to provide further explanations in relation with technical terms and digital environments to make it more clear and accessible. So these are the guiding principles that are underneath the changes and the introductions that we made for the adaptation of the framework. In relation to the stages involved in the production of this adaptation, there are 7 steps. The first was a mapping of regional initiatives. This included existing plans and national policy level of the development of digital skills, training initiatives for employees, in the public sector and in the private sector, different initiatives in relation to digital competencies and skills. Second, the analysis, obviously a detailed and in-depth analysis of DigComp 2.2, which, as you know, is the latest version, together with the analysis of other international frameworks. We also did a consultation with different stakeholders in the region from different countries, mainly policymakers, but also members of the internet community in the region. This included a survey and a virtual session with a workshop. Then with this information, I produced the first draft of the framework using obviously DigComp 2.2 as the main reference. And we shared this framework with stakeholders from the region in a workshop that took place in Santiago, in Chile, in order to receive feedback and get additional ideas to produce the reviewed version, together with the peer review of 8 experts, including you, Riina, fortunately. And finally, we are in the 7th stage, which includes the adjustments and preparation of the final version. Here we have a kind of visual summary of DigCompLAC, which includes the 5 dimensions following the structure of DigComp. So we can see on the left-hand side the first dimension with the 5 competence areas, and then the second dimension with the 21 competencies. This structure remains the same as in DigComp, so we kept the competence areas and the 21 competencies identically as in DigComp. What we have added is a transversal domain area, which is artificial intelligence. And this is obviously due to the importance of artificial intelligence as a transversal dimension that obviously is interconnected with the 21 competencies, and that is mainly seen through the examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and also in the use cases. So we have also included as a novelty two levels of competencies which form the pre-basic category of levels, which is new. So if we see in the dimension 3, we can see that there are 10 levels which are grouped in 5 categories from pre-basic to highly specialized. From level 3 to level 10, these are mainly the same levels that are presented in DigComp 2.2 with minor adaptations, and levels 1 and 2, which form the pre-basic category, is completely new, and this has been introduced in order to represent the first stage of development of competencies that in our region possibly has a lower level than in Europe. Then in dimension 4, at the bottom of on the left, on the right-hand side, we can see the examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And here we have 349 examples, from which 98 are completely new. So these have been produced especially for DigCompLAC, whereas 67 have been reworked. This means that these examples required a certain level of adaptation, either to update them because of the changes in the landscape of technology, or due to a need of localization. Then, as in DigComp 2.2, there were some, let's say, 3 themes that were labeled across the examples. These were artificial intelligence, telework, and digital accessibility. And the DigCompLAC version added 2 more. These are low technology and multiculturalism and multilingualism. This is obviously in relation to the reality of the region. And finally, in dimension 5, that we can see on the right, at the top on the right-hand side, we can see that in this version of the framework, we have 58 use cases, from which 14 are new. This obviously includes some examples for the pre-basic level, as it is new, but it also includes other examples in low connectivity settings, or settings without connectivity, which we might think is not the aim of the digital transformation, taking into consideration meaningful connectivity, but is the reality in the region, particularly in rural areas. So that needs to be considered to think how digital competencies can be developed also in these areas with these kind of constraints. Okay, so let's discuss the different sections and the adaptations of the 5 dimensions. In relation to the area to which the digital competence belongs, as I mentioned earlier, this is exactly the same as in DigComp 2.2. In relation to the title and descriptor of the competence equally, this was maintained as in DigComp 2.2. In relation to the levels, as explained, there were 2 new levels corresponding to pre-basic. In relation to examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes applicable to each competence, as discussed, we added new examples. And in relation to the use cases, which obviously contemplates workplace scenarios and educational settings, as in DigComp 2.2, we also have new examples and adapted examples, obviously others which were kept as presented in DigComp 2.2. In relation to the adaptation of competence levels, as discussed, these are the two new levels which form a pre-basic level. And in relation to the adaptation of competence level descriptors, we made adjustments in some cases with completely full new descriptors, and in other cases making adaptations. Some of the new descriptors are related to the pre-basic level, as explained earlier, and the adjustments are sometimes related to the context of Latin America. For example, we can see here in the yellow square the way in which this descriptor is presented in DigComp 2.2, which says, as well as guiding others, I can. And in the version for Latin America and the Caribbean, what I added is, in addition to guiding other people considering their diverse cultural contexts and levels of digital literacy, I can. And this is because, unfortunately, the region has a big divide in educational levels and also in digital competencies. So the way to narrow this divide is to make those who are more competent to help those who are less competent. So this is the way to develop that awareness and to make a progress collectively. And so finally, there are some new segments which mainly also follow the same criteria, needs related to the region. And there's the example at the bottom also follows the same criteria with adaptations to diverse cultural contexts and persons with different needs and levels of digital literacy, which has to do with the reality of the region. So in relation to examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, which is dimension 4, as in DigComp 2.2, we also have new examples. For example, as we can see in the top, in competence 1.1, in relation to information and data, an example of attitudes includes values the existence of intelligent multilingual machine translation platforms which can be used to adapt information to different languages. Likewise, we have other examples that have been transformed, not possibly with a completely new segment of text, but has been redefined and adjusted. This is the case of the second example, which has an additional segment. In this case, this is in relation to the awareness of data related to AI and biases, and adds a segment related to cultural biases towards indigenous peoples, such as limited or distorted representations of their professional roles, restricting them to solely to artisanal or folkloric activities, and ignoring their participation in scientific, technical, and community leadership fields. And this has to do with biases in relation to the representation of members of indigenous communities. I will not go into detail to each of the examples, because otherwise it will be possibly too long.
You have 5 more minutes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So in relation to AI, which is the transversal domain area, there are some new examples. For example, we have here a completely new one, which is in relation to attitudes and civic participation, understands that misinformation and biases in content generated by AI systems can affect civic participation by distorting public debates or limiting access to reliable information, recognizes the importance of developing critical skills to evaluate the source and reliability of information in digital environments. And then we have some also content that has been modified or reworked. Well, I will skip the examples, but only to mention that we have removed all information specifically related to EU legislation, obviously. And I would like to finish by highlighting some challenges which are related to the implementation of the framework in Latin America, which might be more challenging than in the EU. And this is because in the region we don't have a supranational authority as in the EU. So the regional cooperation is not compulsory, but voluntary. And also we have a diversity of national policies and legislations together with different institutional capacities, and the financing instruments that are in place in the EU, in the European Union, are possibly more robust than those in Latin America, which depends mainly on international cooperation. And there's also a lack of shared monitoring and reporting mechanisms, because of course we don't have something like the EU in the region. And also we don't have a regional qualifications framework, which is a compulsory one. So the framework we are producing will be adopted on a voluntary basis. And also we have greater structural inequalities and connectivity disparities, and finally multilingual and multicultural contexts requiring higher adaptability. So this is basically to share that it is not possible to have a single roadmap to implement in all the countries, and that the systematic design for implementation in the EU, for example, with roadmaps in each country working collaboratively to reach common goals, will have to be worked in the region, possibly with a different approach, inviting them to join the project rather than having institutional mechanisms to deploy this implementation in a more systemic way. Well, thank you very much for this time and for your patience to go through this detailed explanation.
Thank you, Florencia. That was so interesting, and it was not patience. Everybody was hungry hearing all those details of your adaptation. I think that's exactly the essence of your work. And I have to say that when I first looked at it, I really loved the idea that you had the level 1 and 2, what you said there, pre-basic, emerging, because this is so important when we are looking at the rooting these practices into everybody's everyday life. We have to start where they are, and that's a little bit a problem now at the EU level, because we have the basic level and we're not looking at the below basic so carefully, and we're still at the level of only 54% of population being at the at least basic level. So you have at least devised a way for your strategy to work, where the problem lies in bringing people to basic level and from there upwards. Also, I love the idea of low connectivity and how that has to be taken into account, and that's probably your creative background because this is needed, and creativity is therefore low, like in these low connectivity regions. People find ways of doing, getting online somehow or sending messages, and you have also captured that in the terms of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So that's really, really good and probably helpful also for trainers and for propagating those good practices. There were many other also interesting things that we would be discussing, but let me first invite Fernando Rojas here, and after Fernando, we will all have maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you can also ask questions to any of the speakers. So please, Fernando, you work at the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, and you are more specialized in telecommunication infrastructure and digital economy. So tell us from your perspective, what are you bringing in? What is this project bringing in to the ECLAC? Let's say its goals and where you're going from here, the next steps. So thanks for being with us. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, Riina. And good afternoon to everyone joining us today. It's a pleasure to participate in this webinar. Well, most of the main issues were already covered in the previous presentations, so I will be very brief. First, I would like to emphasize that for ECLAC, the development of digital skills is a priority. We see digital skills not simply as a component of digital policy, but also as an enabling factor that will determine if digital transformation is going to produce positive outcomes in terms of inclusion, economic growth, and strengthening of public institutions. In recent years, you know that digital technologies have advanced at an unprecedented pace. However, as was mentioned, the benefits of these changes are not automatically distributed. When digital skills are unevenly developed or even absent in certain population groups, the digital transformation can have the opposite effect of what we want to achieve. Instead of reducing inequalities, it may deepen the structural gaps that are present in Latin America and the Caribbean. It is precisely in this context that the topic of digital skills has become a core component of the concept of meaningful connectivity, as Florencia mentioned. The idea is that connectivity alone is not enough. It must include also the capacity to use digital technologies safely, effectively, and with a purpose. So to advance in this direction, we must improve the conceptualization, the definition, and most importantly, the measurement of digital skills in the region. Without a shared understanding of what we mean by digital skills and without tools to assess them, it is extremely difficult to design effective public policies or evaluate their impact. So this is why the work that we are presenting today together with GIC and CETIC is so relevant. As you have seen in the previous intervention, and especially in Florencia's presentation, the adaptation of the DigComp framework to the regional reality through DigCompLAC addresses exactly these needs. It provides a common reference point that it is aligned with international standard, while at the same time is being sensitive with the socioeconomic, cultural, and linguistic realities of Latin America and the Caribbean. So we think that this balance is essential if the framework is to be useful for governments, institutions, and also practitioners across our region. Looking ahead, our next steps are going to be centered on ensuring that DigCompLAC can be successfully implemented. So we are planning a series of activities focused on dissemination and capacity building mainly. This includes training workshops for government officials and technical assistance, also to support the development of national strategies and action plans for strengthening digital skills. To make these activities as relevant as possible, we want to work closely with the governments to identify their specific priorities. Countries in the region, as also Florencia mentioned, have different institutional contexts, different levels of digital infrastructure, and different policy needs. So understanding these priorities will allow us to refine the design and content of the workshops, and also to better shape the technical assistance that we can provide. Additionally, another key aspect that we wish to strengthen is our relationship with the DigCom community of practice. Maintaining a space for permanent dialogue, we think that it's essential to share experiences, lessons learned, and also emerging practices. So as DigCom evolves, particularly with the DigCom 3.0, it is important that DigCompLAC remains aligned with these global developments while preserving its regional relevance. Well, finally, I would like to express our gratitude for this webinar and for the active participation of the community. And we hope that today's discussion marks the beginning of a sustained exchange of experiences and a deeper collaboration between Europe and Latin America on the issue of digital skills. Thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you all in the next phases of this initiative. So back to you, Riina.
Thank you, Fernando, and thanks for also extending the idea of collaborating with not only the governments, but people who are in the DigComp community of practice, because here we have a lot of practitioners, people who are really every day using this in their training or in their planning of better policies and so on. So there will be a lot of interested people in your work, I'm sure, but also vice versa. There might be something that you can also look at and learn from the community of practice. And this is the beautiful thing of DigComp, that it travels so well or the concept of DigComp, let's say, travels so well from one continent to another. And I think this is a great contribution, not only for the LAC region, but also for other, let's say, low middle income countries. I would like to see if anybody has any questions from the audience. I don't think AI bots will ask questions. I don't think, but we do have some humans there too. And please don't hesitate to turn your cameras on and just raise your hand if you would like to ask some questions to any of the speakers here.
While people think about asking questions, I just wanted to mention I shared in the chat some recent links about events. Well, first of all, the fact that today, this morning, DigComp 3.0 was published. So you can go to the web page of the JRC, the Joint Research Center, where you will find the report, some data sets which accompany the report, some information leaflets. There is a wealth of information related to the new report, which is very interesting. And as you can see, on the 12th of December, JRC and DG Employment of the European Commission will present publicly in a one-hour session the report, the framework. And as community of practice, we are planning to also, most likely in January, start running some meetings among members to discuss issues which are relevant, that you find significant and you want to go deeper into. And for those of you who are not yet members of the COP, I'm sharing here the link to the page where you can find the registration form. And I think the MEDS, Ronald Dahl, asked if there is a link to the DigCompLAC framework. And yes, I'm also curious about your planning time of publication. It's not yet out, but I know there are some ideas. But I wanted, before your answer, I wanted to make a consideration about Fernando's, well, also Florencia's, about the challenges you're facing, etc. It's true that definitely, I mean, in the European Union, we have institutions, regional institutions. The one thing that I think it's really important in this area is the funding programs, that bring together many actors from across Europe to do things together. But consider that education is not one of the domains where the European Commission has a legal power. So what member states do eventually is up to the member states' will in this area. So the Commission runs what we call soft policies, to convince states and other stakeholders to work together. But there is not really a regulatory framework in this specific domain that can oblige anyone to. And in fact, there are countries in Europe who have not even translated DigComp and into their own language. So it's really a process, it's a interesting process of some top-down pressures, on the other hand, bottom-up, and an interesting dynamic. And I think that also this is probably an area where we can, in the future, exchange experiences, because it's not been, in fact, so easy to spread DigComp around Europe and have it adopted. There are many people who, I mean, DigComp has been around for almost 15 years, and many people still don't know it, that it exists. But not only, common citizens, that's normal, but teachers or members of the European Parliament that in a recent event, one of them said, I discovered today the DigComp framework. And so it's, there is a lot of work to do. Exactly. But please, about the publication date, that's interesting to know.
Yeah,
I think for
and the link. But I would like to say also, exactly, the regulatory aspect in education is not there in the EU. But one thing that is really important is that monitoring. We do have a way of monitoring digital skills through digital skills indicator, and that happens every second year through ICT household surveys. And in a way, you do have that kind of a mechanism also available in Latin America through ITU, that now since last spring, they have the 5 DigComp areas also that they are monitoring. So in a way, you do have at least way to collect data. And then interesting what Fernando was saying, that each country might have their own focal point. Somebody might be implementing it in education, let's say primary schools. Other people might be more in the employment setting. And there's a very good report that actually Stefano wrote probably already 7-8 years ago, DigComp into action, and that has exactly those different areas: adult education, upskilling at work, labor, maybe Ministry of Labor is interested how to get the unemployed people into the workforce, and using DigComp there as a tool. So there are different also possibilities, like not every country necessarily goes takes the same steps, and that's something that you have also, we've seen in the European context. So please, that's great. Back to you if you have any link where more information about the DigCompLAC can be found, and also the publication. Yes, please. And then we'll take, after that, we'll take Daniel has a hand up. So.
Perfect. Thanks, Riina. If you allow, we'll briefly share again our slide we have prepared a bit on the next steps.
Perfect.
Not sure. Yes, I think the slide is up. Exactly. So, of course, we put the webinar today here to mark a bit where we are at the moment. And then, yeah, unfortunately, right now there's no link because we are still in the final phase of the adaptation, right? This is also what Florencia and Fernando mentioned. And we are on track, let's say, to publish the framework early next year. So early next year, in our vision, it will be around or until March, because also end of March, we have another key event in the context of the EU-LAC Digital Alliance, which is the high-level policy dialogue on meaningful connectivity that will take place end of March in Paris. So of course, we really want to use this space that normally we have one of these dialogues every year or every second year. On the meaningful connectivity pillar to really leverage this and present the DigCompLAC there. No? So yeah, right now no link to be shared with you, but we can also see to it the colleagues that participated today that we can keep you updated on the development, and once the publication is there, because the framework will be published then also with the recommended implementation guide jointly with ECLAC. Yeah.
Perfect. That's really interesting and good to see that there are sort of in the activities in early 2026 also for you to work. Just one question, we will be sharing, or declaration, we'll be sharing the video, but also most likely the slides, at least some of them, and we'll put them in one of the folder like Stefano usually does. Quick question was from Chile, Daniel Urbina. Let's take that. And I'm aware that it's 3 o'clock and we should be, some people will be going, but Daniel, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a brief comment, really, from the Undersecretariat of Telecoms, the authority in Chile. We have just received yesterday, actually, we were reviewing our field study. We do almost yearly, depending on budget, on access and use of ICT in Chile. It's a study that is made in interviewing households, around 5,000 households from different regions. So we gathered field information from the level of uses, literacy level. So our next step, looking at this framework we just presented today, will be doing the matching. So how are the coincidences between this framework offered and what we have discovered as strengths in what's happening with in the terrain. So very thankful for this presentation and looking forward to all the upcoming activities. Thank you.
Thank you. That's definitely something that you can write into your implementation plan right away as a step to take. Like once you gather any national data and look at that data and juxtapose it with the DigCompLAC to see exactly where to start and which user groups you apply certain strategy, and of course it will be different for each of the user groups. So that's an important, very interesting, Daniel. Thank you for sharing that. Well, with this, I will turn back to Stefano. He has already put their information about the DigComp 3.0, the seminar that it will be coming up. So please, let's wrap this up today and yes, continue.
Yes, so I think unless anyone has, very urgent question, you have your last chance now. I would close this meeting. That was very informative, very interesting. We are really keen on, and we really in the next 2-3 weeks, lots of people will be reading DigComp 3.0 and getting an idea of the changes, and we are really open to share with you opinions about which ones might be relevant for you and what is worth doing and so on. So we have opportunities to continue this dialogue that we started today. and you're all invited to join the COP if you're not there already. And let's keep in touch. And as Riina said, yes, in a few, well, as soon as I get the slides, I will share them on the COP in a public folder, and I will send the link to the public folder to everybody who registered for this meeting, even if you're not a COP member. And maybe the video recording will take a few days, but it will be shared as well, and always in the same folder. So thank you very much again, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the space and everybody for joining. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Stefano, do you want to stay a little?
Yes.
Florencia, how are you? You're muted. We don't hear you anymore.